Hey guys, happy April Fool's Day. Sorry, this isn't an April Fool's joke on you. You gotta do it. Well, you don't got to. I mean, obviously, we don't know what we're doing right now. But, anyways, so what I would like to do today is you've got a quiz on some immigration stuff posted, and on there are some notes and a little graph that will all be in on this lecture. We're going to do it real quick, get you going so you can start pulling some pranks on everybody else, but not me. Don't do me. But anyways, so here it is. So I need you to make sure that you are looking at these notes. All right. And I'm just going to kind of fly through them. And then also there is that graph right there that I will reference here in a little bit too, okay? But for the most part, just so that you can continue to look at my beautiful face, I can't really set this down, can I? Rat dog. So anyways, oh no, camera gets going and you know who comes in.
Where is the Gretel?
I don't know, probably closet where it always is. To the right.
It wasn't there.
All right, go check. So anyways, sorry about that. So we have a long history of immigration in our country, obviously. Thank you. I was right for once in my life. And in this country, in the very beginning, we had a bunch of like pretty much British Protestants coming over and filling up the country and the colonies and all that stuff. And then when we get to like the 1880s and we get the Statue of Liberty, Ellis Island, give us your poor, tired, huddled masses. And they all start coming into the country. They are mostly like Catholics and like Eastern Europeans or Southern Europeans, like, you know, Italians and things like that. And so Protestants and Catholics at the time really didn't get along very well. And so there was always this kind of like fighting and prejudice amongst them. And that's why, like, if you've ever seen like Gangs of New York and all that stuff, you'll see like a lot of the Irish and Italians being pushed into lesser jobs and all that stuff because the Protestants didn't like them. They thought the Catholics were just lazy drunks and all the rest. So what happens is by the 1920s, we've had all of this immigrations from 1880 to 1920, all of these immigrants coming into Ellis Island and all that stuff and this great immigration movement. Well, our government says, nope, we've got to shut it down. And so they go to they start passing legislation. And the first one in 1924 is the Johnson-Reed Act, all right? And that limits, like, only 150,000 immigrants can come into the country per year. Doesn't matter from where, whatever, like, you can't come in more than 150. But it did greatly favor, like, British and like Germans and Protestants from Western Europe more so than anybody else, all right? So then they had in 1952, right after World War II, we get even more stringent, and that comes with those at the Walter McCarran or the McCarran-Walter Act, all right, of 1952, and that even more limits our immigration coming into the country, all right? So then we get to the 1960s and the hippies and everybody's like free love and hey, come on in. So then we get more liberal with our immigration policy. And all of a sudden now we allow for 20,000 people from any country in the world to come to the United States. But there's a loophole, is that if you can prove that you have a family member, a relative of some sort, a second cousin of a cousin of a friend of a cousin of a cousin of a cousin, you don't count towards that 20,000. So all of a sudden our immigration skyrockets. So if you go to that graph and you take a look, here it is. So you can see that, like, where are we at? I can't. 1881, like you see, look at this big spike in immigration. This is Ellis Island and Statue of Liberty and all the rest. Then look at in 1920, remember that Johnson-Reed Act in 24? And if you look all the way to like 1950, well, that's the 1940s, that's World War II, we weren't letting anybody in. But then look at the Johnson-Reed Act also like limits everybody coming into the country. But then you get into the 60s and you see that Immigration and Nationality Act, and look what happens to our immigration. Everybody who's got a friend of a family member is now coming into the country, and there is no limits to really who's coming into the country. And that's just legally. That doesn't count any illegal immigrants coming into the country. So it is super, super important to recognize that our immigration policies do make a difference on how our country looks at immigration and that. So be sure, look at those quizzes, the questions. You know what I'm going to do today? Watch this. So if we go to the quiz, here it is. Looking at the immigration of the U.S. 1620 to 2010, what explains the drop in immigration? And it is both the Johnson-Reed Act and the McCarran-Walter Act, which is A and B there. Then if we come down, what differences existed between those European immigrants that came to the U.S. before the 1880s and those that immigrated to the country between 1880 and 1920? Remember, that's where we said that, let's see, post-1880 were Catholics and Eastern and Southern European. So that answer is correct. And then we'll come down. Historically, looking at U.S. immigration patterns, are government's policies and laws impacting legal immigration into this country? It does. That is a yes on that. And then finally, Immigration and Nationality Act amendments. The big loophole in this was the fact that if an immigrant was related to any U.S. citizen, then they didn't count towards the 20,000 person limit per country. So that is the loophole right there. So with that being said, I love you dearly, miss you dearly. Makes me so sad. Love you. I don't know, where's the camera? Where's the camera?